Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Duke Oishi.
And I'm your co-host, Maria Kashem.
In our show this time, we'll cover our recent ThinkTech Hawaii Venture Capital Association luncheon program on fiscal policy in the 2013 legislative session. How are we going to pay for the things we want?
The panel was very high level. It included senior legislators, officials, and executives to talk about the spending priorities and what we need to do.
We are right in the middle of the 2013 legislative session, so it seemed altogether appropriate to discuss how the legislature will be spending our money this year and how they will raise what they want to spend.
Opening remarks were presented by the person most concerned with these matters, Calbert Young, our State Budget and Finance Director.
After Calbert Young's remarks, our moderator, Bob Toyofuku of Hawaii Advocates, introduced our amazing panel. Tom Apple, Chancellor of UH Manoa, David Ige, Chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Josh Green, Chair of the Senate Health Committee, Denise Konin, UH Professor of Economics, Chris Lee, Chair of the House Energy Committee, Richard Lim, Director of the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, and Jill Tokuda, Majority Whip and Chair of the Senate Education Committee.
Welcome to the Hawaii Venture Capital Association ThinkTech meeting on fiscal policy in the 2013 legislative session.
You know, what a difference 2 years makes, I'll tell you. When I started as the state's finance director 2 years ago, if all of us can remember what we were doing, what was the state of our philosophy and mentality back 2 years ago, the state was in some pretty bad fiscal and financial situations. I think all of us probably had a different perspective about how was our government and our public services, how were we going to survive just for 1 year? And when I started, one of the statements as objectives that I gave to the Senate Confirmation Committee was that I would set it as an objective for the state to build its financial reserves, its positive ending balance through cost reductions, revenue expansion and enhancements, although they may be temporary, and looking for sustainability of programs. And a former Senate Ways and Means chair, and I don't want to say who it is, but it's a former Senate Ways and Means chair, he told me, you know, that's pretty good, but let me give you my professional advice. If you can't get the state $1 billion, don't get us 300 million, because we can't deal with 300 million, and there's always at least $1 billion worth of asks out there, okay? And the big news, if you remember back 6 months ago, was that the state actually achieved the $300 million mark for positive ending balance.
Basically, the themes that will be discussed, specific issues, you know, basically the general economic situation from Professor Konin, and we also have Tom Apple, the Chancellor from the University of Hawaii, to talk about the needs of the University of Hawaii, and Director Richard Lim from DBED to talk about how to grow the economy. And then we'll get into specific issues from the senators on education, health, and the WAM chair, David Ige, to talk about maybe unfunded liability and some of the priorities that the WAM, the legislature has to face, and Representative Lee on energy and other issues.
We're in a fortunate position now, as Colbert has set forward, in that our growth in the economy is a bit greater than we had predicted earlier. The Council of Revenues increased their forecast for growth to 6.7% for this fiscal year. That's the year ending in June, and that results in about somewhere around 67 million extra dollars this fiscal year, and perhaps over the course of the next 2 fiscal years, maybe $250 million, could be up to the $300 million that Colbert referred to. We expect the growth to continue, and in fact, many of our economists from UHERO and the university see this as a very conservative estimate of the prospects for revenue growth in the state. And in part, that's because we recognize that this is part of a recovery time in our fiscal cycle. So whereas if you could just look at this year's revenue collections and base what we believe collections will be next year on this year's, that's really a conservative estimate because we see a number of positive trends in the economy that are pointing us in a direction of growth. And I'd say right now that what we're observing is growth from our very traditional sectors.
I really think that the key, and I know Jay's going to ask us later for one word, and I'm going to give three now and a different word later. But to me, it's the key should be return on investment. Our young people, and my apology to all the gray-haired people here, and there are many of us, but when your young people are producers and they don't consume much, and as we age, we consume more and we produce sometimes less eventually. And investment in young people is, to me, the future of Hawaii. And I also have to say that while we are seeing great increases in some of our biggest industries like tourism, and I just spent a week in China and a booming middle class there that wants to travel and has good feelings for Hawaii because of Sun Yat-sen and some other issues. However, I think there's capacity issues there that's going to limit that, and I think that we need to really grow our information sector in this state, and that's going to come through education and introduction of high tech. And at the university, I think we're front and center for both of those. By the way, I'm also a huge fan of early childhood education because I think that's incredibly important in turning kids' brains on and turning their genes on, if you will, to become problem solvers and thinkers that can handle the knowledge economy.
But in terms of the economy in the short term, I agree with Denise. We're headed for a very, very strong economy, strong rebound. In fact, I think I'm going to make a prediction. I'll bet you that construction experiences an incredible boom, and that we'll end up with actually a shortage of workers in the near term. Having said that, when you look at the long-term picture, it's not quite as sanguine. Hawaii's real economic growth has been 0.8% over the last 20 years. Visitor arrivals have increased by 0.6%. Tourism peaked in 1989 at 30% of the economy, or 30% of our GDP. And today, despite the massive upturn, it's less than 20% of our GDP. So it's shrinking as a percentage of our economy. And tourism revenues in general have not kept up with inflation. So we're back on a growth trajectory now, thanks in large part due to the weak dollar, as well as a strategy to target secondary markets, which is actually proving quite successful. And I think the professor mentioned Oceania, but it's also secondary markets within the United States. And that's really been great. And I think tourism will continue to grow, but the second problem is we'll be constrained by a lack of hotel accommodations. Hotel accommodations over the last 20 years have grown at a 0.4% rate.
I just wanted to briefly talk about the $14 billion gorilla in the room, which is the unfunded liability. The state share of the unfunded liability of the health fund is about $14 billion. And like all states, nobody's really pre-funding it in any meaningful way. So the annual required contribution to meet that unfunded liability is about $520 million. As Calbert told you, the general fund, total state budget general fund is about $5.2 billion. So it's about 10% of our annual operating budget. So, and we don't pay any of it. So really, we have been making an effort to begin pre-funding the liability. The administration has put in $200 million in this budget as kind of the first payment to the mortgage. And we've been working on the Senate side really to really ensure that it's a priority for funding by establishing a schedule that would assure that the state and all the public employers are prepared to meet the annual required contribution in 5 years or by the year 2018. So part of our effort really is trying to put a focus and a priority on ensuring that as the budget moves forward, the responsibility for the unfunded liability is first and foremost.
We've got a number of bills going through the session, but I know we're here to really talk about how we pay for things. And as has been alluded to, usually with education, it's about how things cost the state more than anything. Currently in the session, we've actually got a few bills that are looking to diversify the revenue stream. In particular, taking a look at our inventory of lands and facilities under the department's control that could potentially help us to modernize our public schools. You know, really look at our schools in terms of how can we renovate and build 21st century schools for our students. As you look around at our schools right now, if you have children who have gone to our public schools or have just driven by them, you know that they're not up to 21st century standards. Our students deserve better. And we know for a fact that the money that we put in every single year, whether it be repair and maintenance funds or CIP funds, while significant, yes, they will never get us to that point of being able to modernize those campuses to where we want them to be. And when we look across the country and around the world to what they have, we know that's what our children deserve, and we can get there, but not with the existing revenues that are currently going into the budgets that we have. And so how can we really look at better utilizing the lands and facilities that we have? And that's where you have the two bills that are currently before us, Senate Bill 237 and House Bill 865, to really take a prudent, piloted approach to looking at, can we better utilize these lands and facilities to perhaps generate some alternative revenues to the current general obligation bonds going into the repair and maintenance as well as capital improvement programs that we have right now.
If you ask for what probably the most important words in healthcare that could make a difference are, I'm going to use a hyphen, it's personal responsibility. We spend $3 trillion a year in healthcare in the country, which is such an enormous number, and there's never been a trend that showed it decreasing, that all of our efforts, though admirable in every sector, whether it's at the primary care level or at the hospital level or working with pharmaceutical industries or healthcare reform, we still have seen a steady increase year over year over year in cost, and you bear that out in businesses and economic development. So the only way, from my perspective, to actually contain costs and make this healthcare system change for the better is going to be demanding personal responsibility from individuals, which it is my belief can bring down costs 20%. And I'm going to get to a specific on that, and it's I think a salient point. Okay, just again for some perspective, Bob asked me to address the Medicaid component of our healthcare system, which though maybe those who work with you and family members may not be part of the Medicaid program, we know that the state has a very large number of individuals on Medicaid, and that's, you know, of course, a huge tax burden. Anyone want to venture a guess how many people are on Medicaid in the state of Hawaii? 1.4 million people live here now. Toss a couple numbers out. Someone said 200,000, another number? That's pretty good. 285,000 people are on Medicaid right now in the state of Hawaii out of 1.4 million people.
Very briefly, you know, there's no question that everybody here pays an electric bill. I'm sure they're keenly aware of how expensive that is these days. We import so much of our energy that it's costing us, depending who you ask and how you measure it, to the tune of $7 to $8 billion annually. So the question is, how can we drive this down? Because this is the one cost that underlies everything, whether you're in healthcare and education, whether you're a small business owner, whether you are a resident, a tenant, or my girlfriend who leaves the blow dryer on for hours at a time, driving things through the roof. But this is the one thing. And if the state's going to get involved anywhere, this is the one place that can have an effect from the top to the bottom and side to side. And so it's really optimistic, I think, coming into this year. We've had a number of folks before me who have come forward as chairs of the energy committees and involved in the administration elsewhere who really made this a priority, going back to even the previous administration. We have the Clean Energy Initiative, which will put us at a goal of being 70% renewable by 2030. We're well on our way. We're seeing for example, the solar photovoltaic industry take off. It's experiencing year after year after year of doubling growth. Right now, I think this past year, 26% of all construction permitting was related directly to solar photovoltaic installations and things like that. So the question is, how do we keep this trend going so that at the end of the day, we're going to be able to get to the goals we want, to be able to reduce the electricity costs and everything else that we're paying for that's sapping energy and money right out of our economy.
When the panel discussion was over, we spoke with a number of the people there to get a handle on their reactions to the program.
This is really great. Tremendous opportunity for us to talk to the community, the business community, the tech community, our government leaders. This is what it's all about. This is how we're going to move the state forward.
Oh, I really thought we were engaging today. It was great to have our legislators here along with DBED and the university.
I was telling Denise how much I appreciated her comment about increasing the GET. And the only downside, and this is what we were discussing, is the GET is regressive. So if you increase the GET, it seems to me you need to take care of the regressiveness of it by giving credits to lower income people.
We will have to be making decisions on a lot of these issues, so it's always good to get out and hear what people are saying.
I think there's a lot of ideas out there, and you have a lot of intelligence out there in the community that wants to support being part of the solution for the future of Hawaii. So that's fabulous. There's a lot of optimism to be proud to be living in Hawaii.
I thought it was great. Anytime we get a chance to actually talk about issues and more than just sound bites, I think it's a win for us. And it's great to have so much interest in these big issues.
I also think that we need to have a lot more, instead of public-private partnership, we need to have the public-community partnership as well.
Well, there were a lot of panelists, and I think we did okay by getting everybody to give their spiel, so to speak, and I thought it was very important discussion.
I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, and especially with such a distinguished forum. I think there's a lot of issues that came to bear, and there was a lot of thoughtful discussion.
A lot of discussion on how to grow our economy going forward. A lot of emphasis that growth may have to come from tech-related industries. And we're very pleased that the High Growth Initiative is getting a lot of support in the legislature.
Well, what I really enjoy about you is your consistency and how you focus on a broader picture is very interactive, and that's, I think, something that the audience really likes is the interactivity.
I'm a small business owner in need of venture capital, so they seem to be creating a really good environment, including even direct investment from the government into startup companies, and I'm also developing technology, so I'm really encouraged that we're creating the infrastructure and the foundation for a really booming tech economy.
So the first thing we have to do is make sure that everybody's working together and gets the right information, and that when we look at what kind of commitments we absolutely have to honor. Because I think if you just do a straight cut on the budget without being strategic about it, you're going to cut some very, very great opportunities, whether it's technology, whether where you should put in education, but not done well will actually set us back further.
Oh, a fabulous session. This is as good as they get. Too much information and not enough time to get questions answered, but great shot.
It's a complicated, very complicated question, and there are a lot of competing needs, and each person who spoke, I thought, yes, medical costs, childcare, education, energy. But still, energy comes to the very bottom, I think.
No, I think the legislators that were here today actually were on fire. They were passionate, they were articulate. I'm not going to say it's a sea change, but it's a lot different than I remember it when I worked in DBED in 1979, and I was very happy to see it.
Very different. Of course, the topic is a rough subject, balancing that budget. I thought it was sort of interesting, though, that our whole budget is based on the Council of Revenue Projections, and one of our colleagues pointed out that they're wrong 100% of the time. So that even makes it more difficult when you base it on a number that a bunch of economists come up with that doesn't always match.
The one thing that I felt really needed to be looked at is the long-term future, is going running your numbers out 15, 20, 30 years into the future, because certain things are headed toward collapse here. If you take the long view, you get different outcomes. If you take the long view, you would be looking at what are our energy solutions in the future. Why, if healthcare is about to collapse the whole state economy, we have to look at changes in personal behaviors.
I was particularly impressed with Jill Takuda, and I know that David Ige has a very difficult problem, as does Calvert, but I still have to believe that the needs of the state change over time, and funds need to be repositioned from one program to another program rather than simply expanding the programs.
We were pleased with the participation of so many legislators even during the legislative session. We hope this program was useful for them in dealing with the difficult choices in fiscal policy in Hawaii.
They have to match the money with the mission, and when we don't have enough, they have to find a way to balance the books.
At the end of the day, it's up to them to make sure that the money they allocate to the programs they find most important is well and properly spent and not wasted.
We have to do more than appropriate the money to the right programs. We have to make sure it's being spent on those programs. That's the challenge and the real bottom line. After all, it's our money.
Public awareness and participation is critical, and ThinkTech will of course continue to cover the story.
Want to know more about what's going on in the 2013 legislature? Take a look at the legislative website, capital.hawaii.gov. It's a great website, and there is a lot of useful information there, easily accessible to all of us.
And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. Drive Time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week. Tune into 760 AM for Energy on Wednesday, Asia in Review on Thursday, and ThinkTech Fridays on Friday. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech Radio.
On April 28th, ThinkTech and the Hawaii Venture Capital Association will present a luncheon program at the Plaza Club entitled Hawaii's Growing Financial Connections with Asia. The program will be moderated by Financial Manager Varian Allen. Sign up for this important and timely program on hvca.org.
And now here's Bill Spencer, President of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
I think it's important for our viewers to know that we not only have a brand new, fabulous studio in the Pioneer Plaza, but we've also enhanced the ways in which people can find us and enjoy your programming. So tell us more about that, Jay.
Yeah, we're really happy about that, because we want to get the word out and get leverage and use, the best technology we can find. So what we're doing is when we have a radio show, we also video the radio show, and we show that on Olelo. When we have either a radio show or just a video interview, either way, we broadcast it on our own broadcast system, which is internet radio on Spreaker.com and streaming video on Ustream.com. Okay, and both of the links for Spreaker and Ustream are on our site. So all a viewer has to do or a listener has to do is go to our site, ThinkTechHawaii.com, and you can listen either on the radio or the video to live productions that we're doing at that moment in time. So if you're interested in seeing us live, look at our advisories. If you're not on our advisory list, let us know and we'll put you on our advisory list. It will tell you when we're doing something live, and then you can see it happening live.
How about on the website? You've got a way for people to opt in
to your mailing list?
Oh, sure. On the very first page, the home page of the website, there's a place to opt in. All you got to do is click the button, and you'll be in our list. That's right, Bill.
And of course, you can like us on Facebook. Look for ThinkTech, and you'll find our site, and go like us, because that way you'll get our notices if you happen to be in Facebook. And you can also tweet with us at ThinkTech Hawaii.
That's right.
So there are lots of ways to get involved, and of course, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for ideas for programs, and we'd love to have more sponsors. So if you're interested in being a ThinkTech sponsor, please contact Jay at j@fidel.com, and we have a sponsorship package that'll show you all the ways that you can get credit for helping ThinkTech reach Hawaii and the world.
Yeah, see if you agree with our mission. We want to raise public awareness, heighten the community's awareness of very important issues that are happening in our community and affecting our community. We've been doing that for, 13 years now, and it's all the more important. So we want to heighten awareness about energy, about technology, about environmental issues, and about Hawaii's place in the world.
Especially our economy and how we can diversify the economy, grow the economy, keep our kids here in Hawaii, and strengthen the balance between tourism and military and the government. So go to thinktechhawaii.com and be part of our crowd.
Thanks. Looking forward to a great 2013. Aloha.
Aloha.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Miko on Maui and Helco on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Okay, Maria, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
Totally, Duke! For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or a volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
My name is DJ. ThinkTech raises public awareness.